Good morning and welcome to WNHH-FM's Dateline Hamden. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. Kathleen Schomaker makes Hamden tick. She's the town's green energy coordinator. We might be asking her about hurricanes before we're done. She's also running in next Tuesday's Democratic primary for a seat on the Legislative Council, a seat she previously held for 12 years. Kathleen Schomaker is in the WNHH studio to tell us about all that. Welcome. So nice to meet you, and thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me, Paul.
And I want to thank Yellow Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program. So you are returning to the political arena after a break. You served 12 years in the council. Now you're working in town government and environmental issues. And when you issued a release about why you are in, I found it very interesting because it seemed to tap in to an issue that affects not just the 6th District of Hamden. Is that the North?
No, the 6th District is a southern district.
Is it like State Street and the DMV?
Yes, State Street to Whitney Avenue, north to about Skiff Street.
Mm-hmm. So you do get to have the DMV. My condolences. But no one's going to blame you. It's not the fault of the 6th District Council.
No, it's not.
That we wait all day at the DMV. But you talk about civility.
I do.
And I'd like to read the quote you gave.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
Sure.
You said, hearing from friends, colleagues, and neighbors about contentious and negative interactions among current council members and between council and various administrative and professional staff has shown that a reasonable, collaborative voice is needed once again. I am concerned that the adverse impact such interactions have on Hamden as a community, as a financial entity, and that's why I'm running. I want the people to be able to depend on my public service experience, my dedication to judicious collaboration, commitment to public civility, and respect for our hardworking and dedicated staff. So when I read that, I wasn't thinking just about every article I've been reading about and editing about Hamden, but about our national conversation in Washington, where there seems to be a generation that misses and would like to see a return to bipartisanship, whether it's within a local party in a largely one-party community or in Washington between parties. And they'd like the tone of debate to be more collegial and focused on substance. Is that where you're coming from?
Yes.
Without putting words in your mouth?
Yes, it is, Paul. You interpret my words quite effectively, and I thank you for that shared understanding as we start this interview.
Okay, so why was it strong enough that when you didn't feel like being a council member anymore, you felt like you needed to get back in? Because it's a lot of time. You got to knock on doors. You go to a lot of meetings if you win. People don't say the nicest things about you, so why back in?
The biggest surprise when I started the campaign was that I was knocking on doors in the 6th District, which is my new home district. My prior service was from the 5th District, also a southern district in Hamden. Mm-hmm. And the biggest surprise I ran into were people who are not necessarily political insiders. When I knocked on the door and said that I was offering the 6th District voters a choice on September 10th, they would say, I'm glad you came. What's wrong with our legislative council?
Mm.
And that followed on a process of me being approached by various leaders around town from both parties who had actually come up to me and said, would you please consider running again? We need you back on council. So I started attending a few council meetings, and I was stunned by what I saw and realized that somehow the democratic process, small d, at the council level was seriously broken, and that the Democratic Party members were engaged in a lot of infighting that looked to me like contentious politics rather than collaborative, attentive governance.
And so then you felt that it was your duty, sort of like you were someone who could do that because you had experience?
I had experience, including leadership experience on the council.
Right, you were the majority leader.
I was.
For 6 years.
For 6 years, yes.
All right, I'm going to get to that. So Corey O'Brien came on. He's the person you're running against.
Yes, he's my competitor.
And he is basically the leader of the new faction. Because there's sort of a new group in the Democratic Party in Hamden.
Yes, there is.
They were motivated by the Trump election.
Yes.
They said, we want to do something on the local level.
Right.
In response to we don't like what's happening on the national level.
Right.
And our state elections. They got on the local council here. So I asked Corey O'Brien about your statement, and he said he feels that it's not about, he feels it's about transparency and accountability. He felt that in the past, there wasn't enough questioning. Because, I mean, Kurt Lang, the mayor, talking about this too. He said he feels bad for his town officials because he feels like when they're grilled at the council, it's not just how do you do your job better and what are the answers, but gotcha and embarrassment and antagonistic. And Corey O'Brien's position was that in the past, it was too, quote unquote, collegial, that people didn't ask the tough questions, and the town therefore ran up $1 billion in debt and high taxes, and that there wasn't enough spending scrutiny. So his argument is that there needed to be more tough questioning. He's arguing that it hasn't been. So he and you don't agree about what the tenor of the meetings has been like. He says he feels it hasn't been personal, it hasn't been mean, but it's been tough questioning, and therefore it was necessary because of deep problems in the town. Kurt Lang's response has been, he looked at Myron Hull, who was a member of the board of Ed for a long time. He said Myron would be cranky. He'd ask, make my people come ready to ask really detailed questions about numbers. But in Lang's view, it never got personal or mean, and that he felt that was the right way to do it. So does Corey O'Brien have a point that the town built up really deep problems over time it didn't address before any of you are even on it, like underfunding pensions, and that there needed to be a little more scrutiny, openly, and accountability?
Well, I think that scrutiny and accountability for the built-up pension obligation was handled quite effectively under Mayor Scott Jackson when Kurt Lang was the chief administrative officer, and I was on the council. And we did a lot of study and scrutiny of the pension obligation, of the bond, of that process, of what it would mean for Hamden, of why we had to bite the bullet and improve Hamden's financial standing by dealing with that woefully underfunded pension obligation. We learned that just taking the pension obligation bond was not enough. We also had to pay attention to the pension contract when it came up for renewal. We had to look very carefully at the COLA in the pension contract.
And that's the cost of living adjustment.
Thank you. And
not Pepsi.
Thank you for that. Hadn't occurred to me. The cost of living adjustment. And I actually did a lot of reading on that, a lot of question asking, and I don't think that we were non-transparent about that. I think that we were judiciously investigative, that we learned what it meant, that we talked about it openly in chambers at great length, and that we reaped the benefits in our bond rating from tackling that very tough issue, from listening to taxpayers say, you know, what does this mean for my taxes, from answering that very directly and honestly. My problem with the current rhetoric about transparency is that I do not see a lot of transparency on this council when there are long backroom caucuses followed by cancellation of major parts of the agenda. Now, maybe that's been improved, but I have witnessed tabling of items for what are not clear reasons. I have witnessed.
So it's done unofficially. People go to the back of the room. It's not a caucus. Like it's not an official party caucus. It's four people going to the back
an official
of the room.
Party caucus behind closed doors. I mean, I
Okay.
went to a meeting one night. They were in caucus for something like an hour and a half.
Huh. Because I asked them about caucuses. Because in New Haven, the Democratic Party has all the seats.
Yes.
This one guy's independent. We caucus with them. So they have the party caucus that nobody goes to, and they decide everything they're going to do. Then they have the board pre-meeting caucus, which takes 7 seconds at most. And they don't really talk about anything, and that's where the public can watch. The meeting comes in, nobody knows why they did it. Corey O'Brien claims that as majority leader, he has had more of the debates on the floor and less in caucus to make it more transparent. And I asked him about the argument that some people feel like sometimes people need to quietly settle differences without the public glare in order to make compromises. And he thought that, and that's really two sides to that argument. And he argues that he's had less time in caucus and more of the debates on the floor that didn't used to take place, that it wasn't settled in the caucus. Is he wrong about that?
Well, I have not witnessed all of the council meetings,
Yeah.
so I'm not going to give a direct answer to that. But I do know that I have witnessed meetings where I saw things tabled for non-transparent reasons.
Mhm.
And I have heard about meetings that are very contentious on the floor and go late into the night. And it seems to me there's something wrong when the majority can't have a caucus, come to the floor, have a meeting that takes place within a reasonable number of hours. Late meetings that go too late into the night are abusive, not only of other council members, but of the public who wants to witness what their council is doing. So, to my eye, it's kind of an undisciplined process of not respecting other people in the room and hiding the infighting behind caucus doors, and then coming out and just canceling things that they can't agree on.
So maybe there's a balance here. That's a very interesting argument you bring up. I know that as a reporter and as a citizen, I haven't liked it when meetings go to midnight and people don't sit them out, you know. So you're saying that if there's not some level of discipline where ideas can be aired publicly but not going on all night and have it be contentious, that actually serves the public more and can be more accountable.
That would be my position. Yes.
That's interesting.
Yes. Paul, I think of it as I'm gonna go here. You know, there's a lot of conversation these days about climate science and who denies the science and who embraces the science. There are other sciences that are important, and one of them is neuroscience and how we as humans use our brains and what works. It's hard. It seems to me to be almost science denialism to think that it's appropriate to have human beings arguing about important matters to the community late into the night when they're bound to be tired, weary, worn down. And that to me is ineffective governance. And that is my defense of having a disciplined process with a reasonable time frame that also allows other people other people who have lives and jobs and children to take care of the next day, to witness their government in action and not to have it be a distressing thing for them.
That's very interesting. And we're talking about that on Dateline Hamden with Kathleen Schomaker, a candidate for the District 6 seat in Hamden in a Democratic primary this coming Tuesday, September 10th. So what are some of your top policy goals? We talked about civility, which is a big issue in Hamden. It's a big issue in the country, and accountability and transparency. What else are at the top of your agenda to deal with if you get elected back to the council?
Well, for the last 2 years, I have been serving as a part-time town employee as energy efficiency coordinator and was appointed by the council and asked by the mayor to serve as our point of contact with a statewide program called Sustainable CT. When I served on council before, my motivation was actually to discover how I could promote and support municipal sustainability in Hamden. It became a opportunity that I wanted to take following my taking a master's degree at the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies in sustainability, and I focused on urban environmental management. And I realized that here I was in this small city in Connecticut, had become my hometown, and I wanted to give myself to the process of evolving us into the 21st century as a sustainable municipality. So that is my big idea that motivates my public service.
So how do we do that on the ground? Is it from the new recycling stuff? Is it the paper bag ban they just passed?
Sustainable CT is a very well thought out program that basically challenges a municipality to select a series of specific actions that must then be documented. And it's kind of nice because you get points. You get certified sustainable if you add up points, and you have to do something in every category of the program. Now, by my training and my proclivity, I really buy into what's called the three-legged stool of sustainability. A lot of people think that it's only natural systems, but sustainability really involves stewardship of nature and natural resources.
Which is coming up in the 10-year plan for the town, where people are talking about preserving open spaces.
Correct. It involves having a thriving and viable local economy. And it involves having a thriving local community, which is where governance comes in for me. The social interactions among the members of the community.
They can tackle challenges.
They can tackle challenges. They have a kind of resilience. I mean, when the tornado comes through town, when the hurricane hits, it makes all the difference in the world what the relationship tone is in the community.
How do you pull together and get good information and help each other? So here's my very uninformed scientific question for you.
Go for it.
We're going through, there are more and more major storms than we used to have. It seems that while you can't say this storm was climate change, that storm was climate change, like with the hurricanes. We're not getting hurricanes because it's climate change, but it's pretty clear that they're much more intense than they used to be because of how warm the oceans are, where 90% of the greenhouse gases are stored, and that heats up the hurricanes and makes them more devastating. So over the past decade, we've had a lot more superstorms in Connecticut than we used to have. And for some reason, Hamden gets hit. I'm not making this up. Hamden gets hit so much harder than New Haven, North Haven. So it's not just that New Haven's by the water, so it's more moderate. Wallingford, Cheshire. Every time it seems like there's a major storm, Hamden gets so much worse. I'm going back to '89 when it was a tornado in Hamden. It really wasn't a tornado anywhere else. An entire block, couple blocks were just devastated. More recently, we had like some big rainstorms that were like floods where people couldn't get home all night in Hamden. We're spending hours trying to get their cars places, walk places. When we had Snowmageddon in 2013, the biggest snowfall in the state, 3 feet, was in Hamden. Is this just like sort of voodoo superstition, or is there something about Hamden's topography?
Well, I have wondered about that,
or Sleeping Giant Park. Remember, it was closed for a whole year because of that storm.
Yes. No, when I first came to town and got involved, I remembered people telling me, "Wow, there's no trees here because of the big tornado in 1989,"
which was a tornado only there.
Yes,
I mean there were high winds everywhere.
And then we had the tornado just in the past year, the May tornado.
Yeah. Which again was not a tornado here in New Haven.
Yeah. So I don't have a scientific answer for that. Of course,
cursed. I think it might be that you guys are cursed, or maybe you guys have been chosen by the weather gods to demonstrate your resiliency and have that carry over into political conduct.
You know, I understand it's very popular these days to think of who's chosen. Please let the record show, Paul, that you are laughing with me.
But there is a lot of green stuff going on in Hamden. Like you've changed the way you do recycling in a big way because that whole world market has changed. And more kinds of separation, higher kind of rules for what can go where, more separation, different kinds of stuff you leave by your curb, right?
Well,
and you got the plastic bag ban that became statewide.
The plastic bag ban is a wonderful thing. I want to acknowledge Brad McDowell and the council for really getting that through. That's a wonderful thing that happened. Recycling is a state and national problem right now. I'm sure you've been reading.
We've done shows on that about how China was no longer taking our stuff because it was so poorly sorted that most of it ended up being bad. So the whole economics of it got bad. So towns lost money recycling.
Right. So I'm working closely with Joe DeRisi, our new recycling coordinator. He's been there for, several months now. And I'm very concerned about the recycling situation. He's leading on that. We're having lots of conversations about how do we reduce the tonnage of our solid waste because that's a direct impact on an expense line in the town budget. I'm a fan of curbside composting. I think we have to figure out how to get there.
I love composting. We have big composting in our backyard.
Yeah. I've done backyard composting everywhere I've lived in Hamden so far.
As does Margie Bonaty. She's a big composter,
Yeah.
Republican member of the
Yeah,
council.
yeah, and a gardener too.
Yeah.
She has
So
bestowed.
after I talked to you folks in the town about this issue, I read an article in Sierra Club magazine, I think it was, which kind of changed my view of how to be a recycler and a composter. So I always felt very noble because we don't eat meat, so like all our scraps go in the compost, and then we recycle a lot of stuff in our blue toter, and then there's just a little bag every week. But Sierra Club said this is a way to rethink about it so that you're not feeling like you recycle every last thing, but rather become a better quality recycler. Like a top cap to a soda bottle or a juice bottle is it doesn't always have the symbol on it, so you really shouldn't put that in there.
Right.
And that if you have pizza stuff all over the box, you don't put it in there, and that just ruins the whole thing. So rather than feeling noble because your bag is so little, think more about yield. You can have a little bit of a bigger bag that goes to the trash, but the stuff you put in the recycling is better.
Higher quality recycling. The new what's in, what's out.
Yeah.
I have to consult it because I'm what people refer to as an aspirational recycler, and I've had to retrain myself.
We all do.
And
that
have
was my
to do
long
that.
way of saying that exact same thing. We get used to patterns when we sincerely read up what to do. I'm talking 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Understand.
Yeah, and now we gotta get the whole list again. The city of New Haven put new stickers on everybody's recycling bin to try to relearn.
That's great. That's a good idea. I like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we were talking about policy initiatives, and I think that the Sustainable CT program is an excellent guide for policy initiatives related to local economic development.
So, if elected, you'd like to put some of these on the local agenda.
I think they are already there.
Okay.
And it's about framing them and focusing on them as and communicating about these initiatives.
So as a council
as being part of a sustainable municipality program and agenda and a pathway.
So would the role of a council member be, if the right laws are in place, to collegially monitor how it's being carried out in practice, in hearings with town officials, reviewing budgets, asking for information about results? That's
Precisely.
your role? Okay.
Precisely. There's the public works director works with the recycling coordinator to report on tonnages of waste and recycling. We have a tree commission and an active Hamden Alliance for Trees, and we'd like to do a very comprehensive. I would like to see us do a comprehensive manage our urban forest program that would involve the Public Works Department again, but to really follow the steps in Sustainable CT.
Tell me about that, about an urban. What does it mean to manage an urban forest program? Does that mean?
There are trees around your city. There are street trees. There are park trees. There are woodlots. That urban forest is important for cooling and shading areas of town. It's important for the natural beauty that we appreciate.
It's important for our souls, even on a subconscious level when we're walking around.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
On a hot summer day, I cross over and walk down the shady side of the street, and I think most people do. Yeah. Trees in the planting strip have a calming effect on traffic. There are a lot of advantages.
So illuminating is a big factor in this, because on the one hand, they get a lot of public pressure to make sure they trim trees around wires.
That's right.
So that in storms, which seem to love Hamden, they don't knock down the wires. But on the other hand, there's always criticism, I don't know enough to know if it's right, that they don't do it well, so they destroy the trees or they take down trees that shouldn't come down. So on our street, they just, in our city, New Haven, they want to do one in front of our house. And I was saying to my wife, and I were looking at it yesterday, we were saying, boy, that tree's lovely and in great shape. Eric Marciano says, good morning to all. Good morning, Eric. Thanks for listening. And she said that in one of our neighbor's trees, they did a bad job of cutting it so that it actually died. They took too many leaves off. And I was wondering, is that true about UI? Because they have a lot of money. They've done a lot of tree cutting for years. Don't they know how to do it right?
Look, I'm not going to. I don't have a formal evaluation of UI's tree cutting policy. UI is our utility partner, and we need to have a good working relationship with them. What Hamden needs is a coherent policy about trees. And there are professional foresters all around. I'm not one of them, by the way.
But you did go to the forestry
But I
school,
did
so
go
you
to
could
the
ask them
forestry
questions.
school, so I know how to ask the question. But we have professional foresters, including a wonderful state forester that we can work with to have a coherent policy that suggests where, when is this tree wrongly placed? When is this tree a real threat to the wires? And when should this tree be preserved?
People in Hamden really care about that.
And I really care about that.
And I care about reminding you that you listen to Dateline Hamden with Kathleen Schomaker. She's a candidate to return to the Legislative Council, 6th District, in Tuesday, September 10th's primary. By the way, do you keep that job with the city if you get elected?
Yes, it's a part-time job, and I can keep that part-time job with the town.
Do you have to recuse yourself from budgeting issues about that?
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I'll figure that out as I go. I don't have a problem recusing myself when I need to. One of the things I like about our council is if someone's recusing themselves, they can say why, and I can step away from the council table and be the energy efficiency coordinator when I need to.
All right. The last thing I want to ask you about UI. Part of our environment is light pollution.
Yes, it
and
is.
light impact. And Kurt Lang has been trying to get UI to do what it did in New Haven, what the Eversource, I guess, is the other major.
Yes, the other.
In most of Connecticut, they let municipalities buy their street lamps so they can install energy-saving LED lights that aren't as bright in the night. Where does that stand, and where do you see yourself on that issue?
So we've just had a breakthrough on that.
I didn't know that.
That we're looking at very closely. We have we're in conversation with an energy services company called Noresco. In fact, the contract with them went for the investment grade audit went to council just last night. And Noresco, we have a good working relationship with them. I've spent a long time working with our owner's rep, Celtic Energy Incorporated. And so I was part of the process of identifying Noresco as our energy services company for Hamden. We're stepping into the investment grade audit. Mayor Lang asked them if they would take a look at the United Illuminating latest offer for updated LED bulbs for our Hamden streetlights, and if they would review the cost-benefit analysis that we were working with. And they came back to us just days ago with the professional response that it's quite possible that we would be better off letting UI
Don't assume the cost and the responsibility as long as you get the results you want.
And that had largely to do with the tariffs that are applied to municipalities who own their streetlights. It's a different pricing for the electricity.
Who charges those? Oh, you mean that the electric companies? So if they
the
can't,
tariffs are approved by PURA, and then the electric
that's the
company,
Public Utilities Regulatory Authority.
Yeah, Public Utilities
otherwise
Regulatory.
known as the utilities spokespeople.
Yeah.
So in other words, they use their influence at PURA to
Yeah,
try to
yeah.
make
So
it
there's
less advantageous
sort of
for
a
municipalities.
pressure.
That's awful.
So anyway, so we're taking a very careful look at that assessment from Noresco, and
all right. And so Kathleen Schomaker, if you get reelected, you'll be returning to a council you served on for 12 years, 2005 to 2017. When you look back at your time at the council, what are you proudest of having done there? And what would you like to do differently based on your experience?
Well, Paul, it was a very different council. One of the things I'm most excited about is that we have some new young people interested in council, and some of them are focused on becoming good leaders, and I look forward to working with them. We have some new experienced people running in some of the districts. So, over the course of, let's see, I was first elected, I think, in 2005. And I was very wet behind the ears. I spent a lot of time learning about the budget. I sort of made a personal resolution that I was going to learn several different department budgets a year. It was impossible to learn it all the first year. So that's kind of how I set about doing my work. And what was nice is there were more experienced people on council, and when there were budget dimensions that I hadn't yet delved into, I could talk with them about that, and I could talk directly with department heads about that. So my philosophy of service is to listen, to learn, then to engage in conversations, and then to respect if someone else seems to know more about it than I do. The trick is to ask good questions. I think I do that. So, the process of serving won't change much for me.
You ready for late nights again?
No, I'm ready to really suggest that the nights not be as late as some of them have been on this council, and I have already explained to you why I think that's an inappropriate practice.
Mm-hmm.
And if it happens once in a while, that's fine. But when I hear people say...
There was one woman who voted away. She was confused, and the whole budget didn't pass because she cast a vote that she thought was the other vote.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great example.
I felt bad for her.
I felt bad for her, too. Yeah. So the policy agenda for me really dovetails with my my part-time job. I really think that sustainability is a large threshold issue in all municipalities and in all localities right now. I feel very strongly about that. And I will bring that to the table, just like other people might bring financial management expertise to the table.
And again, you define that as both environmental issues and the environment of the political environment and how stuff gets done.
And the local economy. It's a three-legged stool: ecology, economy, and community.
All right. Before I let you go, what about the changes in the Democratic Party? So Hamden Progressive Action Network has brought a lot of new people in, as we said, since 2016. On the state level, they've helped elect candidates who were for, paid family leave, bigger minimum wage, stuff that government expands. At the local level, they're for tighter reins on spending accountability because towns don't print money. And they I guess, probably influential in the town committee endorsing your opponent.
Correct.
And running challenges to people who've been a long time. Mm-hmm. What does that mean for the party?
So I want to say two things about this. I want to talk about what progressive means.
Okay.
And I've been a progressive all my life. I was raised by white civil rights activists in rural Kentucky in the 1950s and 60s.
And you said that's how the pronunciation of your name, Schomaker, even though it looks like Showmaker. It's from a family in that region.
It's
right?
an Ohio River Valley family. We say Shoemaker. That's how I grew up. That's what sounds correct to me. So let's go with that.
Okay.
So I'm as progressive as they come, lifelong. I uprooted my child and myself in the middle of a career to move to New Haven and to spend my own money, and I'm not from a wealthy family, to take the degree at the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, because I had become convinced that for the rest of my life, I had to, on behalf of future generations, address the very serious issue of climate damage, which I believe in, and the related environmental strategies and economic strategies and community building strategies that are really necessary in the 21st century. I think that the Hamden Progressive Action Network agrees with that. My concern, I understand the fear and anger that arises. I feel fear and anger. I think that on the human level, we have to understand that our hearts and our souls and our minds are all filled with this kind of angst about where we're going and what's happening with our communities. And we have to manage that without creating a kind of bullying response to people who, at first blush, appear to disagree with us. I love knocking on people's doors, introducing myself, and then hearing what they have to say about what is of concern to them, and taking the time to connect on that. And so that's one of my concerns, that the conversations that matter might not be going deeply enough yet, but we will get there. I'm willing to go there. And the second thing is that I'm detecting some ageism.
Are you older than your opponent?
Oh, yeah.
What are the differences?
I have no idea. I have no idea. But
so you seem more like Mayor Pete and you're more like Nancy Pelosi?
I'm not quite Nancy Pelosi. I wouldn't lay that claim.
I would say that she has revolutionized everyone's thinking.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
But I'm not sure with Biden yet or Bernie that you should be president at 86 years old.
I'm not gonna convey where I'm at.
Yeah,
I want the Democrats to get job one done.
Yeah.
And that's my top concern.
Yeah.
And I'm going to leave it at that.
All right. Well, you're not running for that anyway. Yeah.
That's right.
You take some ageism. Okay. So Kathleen, it was really a pleasure to meet you today and find out what you're all about.
Yeah.
Really interesting words, not just for Hamden's 6th district, but for our country, about political environment and how that fits into a larger vision of sustainability.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on Dateline Hamden.
Thank you, Paul.
I hope you come back.
Thank you. I will do that.
And thanks to Yale New Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program. And thanks to the miracle man behind the controls, station manager Harry Droz. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.